it's always hard to come third, so at least I'm not fourth, because a lot of great arguments have already been made about how important student volunteering is. And it really does matter. And I don't think, I mean, it's like preaching to the converted, isn't it? You know, it matters to the universities, it matters to the students involved, and it matters to the communities that they engage with. And it was for that reason that the National Co-ordinating Centre for Public Engagement bid for funding from V, which is, I'm sure you all know, is a young person's volunteering charity, to get funding to support a student volunteering project. So the National Co-ordinating Centre for Public Engagement was set up as part of a project called the Beacons for Public Engagement. It's funded by HEFGE, the Research Councils and the Wellcome Trust, and it is set up to inspire a culture change in how universities engage the public. As part of it, there's the National Co-ordinating Centre, and we're based in Bristol, and then there are 6 beacons for public engagement that are spread across the UK. And each of those beacons, they got funding to try and look at a challenge their institution faced around embedding public engagement in their strategy, and that they had a great plan for how they were going to meet that challenge. And that's why those universities and those university partnerships got funding to be beacons. We're funded for 4 years, and then after that, who knows? In this current climate, indeed, who does know? But what we're hoping is that we really will be able, at the end of those 4 years, to make a real difference to public engagement. There are 3 main things that we're trying to do. One is inspire the culture change. One is to try and build capacity for public engagement within universities. And the third thing we're trying to do is build effective partnerships. So one of the things that's very odd to me, I'm not from the from the higher education background. I've been a student and I've done research, but I'm very new to it. And one of the things that really surprises me is that there are lots of external partners with lots of expertise around public engagement and the like who would long to work with universities and actually struggle to find a way to do that. And for example, the BBC, I used to manage massive learning campaigns. We had to work across the UK, and we always wanted to work with students, we wanted to work with universities, but actually we had to broker each of those relationships individually, and that was very, very difficult for an organisation like the BBC to do. And so one of the things that the NCCPE is trying to do is look at how might we work together, how could 20 universities work together to support audiences around science or support audiences around literacy. I wonder whether it's worth just capturing a little bit about what public engagement is or isn't. One of the things that we're going to do over the next 2 years is define public engagement. So if you see me again in 2 years, I may be saying something very different to what I'm going to say now. But I think public engagement is an umbrella term, and it covers a huge amount of diverse activity. So at the far end, you've got what Peter already referred to, which I call engaged research, where community, members of the public in the community can help frame research questions with academics and work together with them to find out the answers to those research questions. And then at the other end, you have things like public lectures and festivals, equally vital in terms of inspiring people with some of the great stuff that universities are doing. The V Project, what is the V Project? We've got £1.1 million from V. And the main aim of the money that we've got from V is to stimulate a step change in the quantity, quality and diversity of student volunteering, which I think is quite a tall order because it's already brilliant. There's already fantastic work going on. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to make that happen? And we have 6 things that we're going to try and do. Not on our own. We're hoping that coming to events like this is about starting to make some relationships with people who can inform this agenda. We're not wanting to reinvent any wheels, we're wanting to celebrate the wheels that have already been made. Okay, so the first thing we're going to try and do is we're trying to encourage universities to recognise the value of student volunteering. Now, we've already heard 2 universities that already recognise it very strongly, but not all universities recognise its value, and not all of them want to necessarily fund it out of their core funding. And so we're wanting to find a way of encouraging those universities to think differently about student volunteering and help make a case so that staff in those universities can get it funded. We want to develop an evidence base. We've already heard a little bit about that. We've started that already. We've been doing a lot of research. We've already spoken to 40 universities about their student volunteering, about how it's supported, how it's funded, what the struggles are, what the opportunities are. And over the next year, we're going to be doing a lot more research. And so if you want to be a part of that, or you want to help inform that, please let me know. The third thing we're going to try and do is we're going to try and inspire funders to be, and other people who can support student volunteering, to be strategic in the way that they fund it. I don't think anybody's going to disagree that that's important. The fourth thing we're going to try and do is to develop some resources. And we're not looking to create resources that already exist. We'll be showcasing those resources and hopefully helping more people have access to them. And if there are gaps in the resources, then we'll work together to create some resources to fill those gaps. I'm going to indulge myself slightly, I hope that's all right, but I just wanted to tell you a story that illustrated what Peter said about the power of narrative. I do think that within student volunteering there is a desperate need for narrative stories about what's great. And I think the issue is all of you know those stories. You know, that you've got them coming out of your ears because that's where you work. You work amongst students, or you are students who are volunteering, and you have those stories just, they're your, bread and butter. And when I was at the BBC, I ran a project called People's War. And People's War was about inspiring older people to use the internet. And we encouraged them to do that by asking them to contribute their memory of World War II onto an online database. And they struggled, not surprisingly. And so we recruited 4,000 volunteers to help us. And those 4,000 volunteers worked for us from a week to a month to 6 months to a year to sit down and work with older people using the internet to record their story. And I think, so what? There is a bit of a so what? But if I tell you that one of those volunteers is a guy called Arthur. Arthur came to us, his wife died, and his wife, before she died, said, Arthur, don't sit in the house. Don't sit in the house and be miserable. Go out and do something useful. And then his wife died, and he was sitting in the house thinking, I've got to do what she said, I've got to do something useful. And on the local radio, an announcement came out and said, tell your story for People's War. And he thought, oh, maybe I could do that. I've got a World War II story, maybe I could do that. And he toddled off to the local museum, and he told his story to a volunteer story gatherer. And they got on like a house on fire. And then Arthur thought, well, maybe I could do that. Maybe I could take somebody's story. So he started volunteering to take people's stories at the museum. And after a week, the People's War roadshow left. And Arthur was like, well, what am I going to do now? So the museum set him up a little corner of the museum so that he could carry on. He carried on for a year. He then trained on IT. He then went on to start doing a newsletter for local people who had contributed their stories. He was an inspirational man. I met him only once. He came to a wonderful conference I ran and talked to people about why volunteering mattered when you're in your 80s. And he was an absolutely lovely, lovely man and an inspiring man. And then when I think, well, there's 4,000 of him out there, then I think, yes, it matters. It really, really matters. And I think, so narrative, really important. Okay, I'm nearly coming to the end, you'll be pleased to know. Okay, so the fifth thing we're going to try and do is run some pilot projects. So the pilot projects are going to be national and regional, and we're going to be using the evidence base that our research has done to identify gaps in our knowledge and understanding, and then we'll be calling for universities to help us plug those gaps. And finally, and I never quite know how I should say this, because the jury's out a bit for me on this one, but we're going to write a student volunteering manifesto. And I kind of think, well, yeah, okay, it would be great to have a manifesto, wouldn't it, that summarised all the things we all know that are really important about volunteering. But a manifesto only has value if people actually sign up to it and then do it. So I'm kind of thinking a manifesto may be the best way of doing that, but maybe there are other ways. So let us know. Tell us what you think. Is a manifesto the right way forward, or are there better ways of encouraging universities to support student volunteering? I'm coming to an end of my talk. I hope that you'll be interested about the V-funded project. I'm hoping it can help the work that you all do. I'm hoping that it can really make a difference for student volunteering. I come to my 3 words. And I started off with make a difference, but somebody said that yesterday. Then I thought make volunteering heard. Thanks. Okay, so here you go, my 3 words. Inspirational, vital, valued. That's how the NCCPE value volunteering.